Balance, boundaries, and breaks is something that came to me when I was going through treatment and therapy. The first one was balance, and understanding that balance has nothing to do with being equal, but actually more about equity in terms of giving your time, energy, and efforts to people and activities that are reciprocate them. The next one is boundaries. And for me, it wasn't so much about respecting the boundaries of others, which is important, but also understanding my own boundaries and setting my own boundaries and adhering to them. The last one is breaks. And this has to do with the mindfulness as well. This is just pausing, taking a moment of time to pause in life, to relax, to take things in, and understanding what it means to be in the present. And also taking time out for yourself.
Welcome. Thank you for tapping into some Untapped Keg, our podcast about sobriety and mental health, where we spotlight stories that provide hope, love, and hopefully some mindset opportunities. I'm one of your hosts, RJ Zimmerman, and today's show is brought to you by Sober Athletic Wear, NordVPN, and Way Skincare. We're part of the Believe Podcast Network. We can talk about that later, though. I'm excited to be joined by Evan Whitehead. Evan has been an educator for 20 plus years, holding the positions of special education, paraprofessional, and teacher, community outreach coordinator, and assistant superintendent of special services. In his current role as the director of special services for a pre-K through 8 school district in Illinois, he oversees special education, English learners, early childhood education, MTSS, SEL, equity, diversity, and cultural competency. Evan is an author, mindfulness practitioner, consultant, trainer, presenter with Dr. Ruby K. Payne's AHA Process Incorporated, and a certified mindset and accountability coach. He promotes a lifestyle and self-advocacy in the areas of mental health, mindset, self-care, and well-being through his 3 B's: balance, boundaries, and breaks. Morning, Evan. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing well, RJ. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
I'm excited to talk with you because I think that our education we just need to talk about it. We need to have conversations, right? And I really want to get into like that balance, boundaries, and breaks, because that's something that I'm just learning about at 35. So before we get into that, let's hear from Sober Athletic Wear. Alcohol, drugs, food, sex, gambling, shopping, pornography, gaming, and even social media are self-medicating tools we use to escape life's traumas, depression, and anxieties. Sober Athletic Wear's mission is to destigmatize addiction, mental health, and the negative stigma surrounding the word sober. If you have a heart for people dealing with mental health and addiction, show your support by repping the Sober brand. Visit soberathleticwear.com to browse Soberwear, and also watch a clip from our Untapped Keg podcast featuring Troy Colmer, founder of Sober Athletic Wear, as he shares his story of addiction and why he started sober. Remember, we're all getting sober from something. So, coming back from that, Evan, I love your shirt. I already commented on that, but I'd love to hear more about you, about Evan. Introduce us to kind of your directives, a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, I'm a husband, a father of 2. We were just talking a little bit about that before we came on air, about the joys of parenthood. And I was just as I was sharing with you, my daughter's 16, my son's 14, and my son had a sleepover last night. So we had to do a little quick change in location for the podcast. But, I think parenthood is one of the best things that you can ever do as an adult. I think it's true vulnerability in practice, because there is no rule book. There is no guidebook. There's, everything is truly trial and error. You try your best to follow what some may think is best practice, and you try to improve on anything from your childhood that you feel wasn't successful. But at the end of the day, it is, truly trial and error and figuring out what works best. But it's the joys of parenthood. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Oh no.
Spanned over 30 years almost. And, looking at 4 different decades. And, I never dreamed or never thought about being an educator. Just one of those things that kind of fell in my lap. It was one of the first things that came natural to me besides athletics. So I figured it was going to be a good opportunity and a good profession to get into. Aside from that, I do a lot of work outside of my school district as well. As we were talking, I really enjoy doing podcasts like this, because I get a chance to talk to people about things that I've endured and things I've gone through, and how I've been able to get through them through my own lived experience. And I think that's more important than anything else. I think when I think about the word hope and what that means, especially in our community of recovery, whether whatever organization you may be in, but through mine, which is Narcotics Anonymous, it's hearing other people's experiences. And truly what that means is that we get joy, we get passion, we get comfort, and really get some knowledge of hearing other people and what they've gone through to get to their point, because I think it connects us together. So I'm really, happy to always, do a podcast and get on a show and talk to people about my experiences and what I've gone through and how I've made it through the other side.
You're very accomplished. And I really do enjoy the parenthood talk, because that's something we don't talk about.
Nope.
That's when you really do realize. I think you kind of muddle through at some point life is going to click. At some point I'm going to get the instruction booklet. And then you get to parenthood and you're like, oh crap, there is no instruction booklet. This is just you all of a sudden you learn that your parents were kind of full of crap and flying by the seat of their pants too.
Yes.
And that's kind of oh, okay. I see how this is.
Right. No, it is. And I think, for me, and especially with the topic that we're talking about, mental health and sobriety, and being a parent, right? And going through that. And now that I'm in recovery, and then, my mental health is a lot more stable than it was, at one point in time. You think about the challenges that creates in terms of being a parent. I know for myself, what I realized, in reflecting on my past is that I was physically present, right? But I wasn't necessarily emotionally present because of all the other things that were going on in my life. And, thank God, the impact of my addiction was not so severe that it really had a big impact on my children's upbringing. I have a great wife. She's phenomenal. She stuck by me through everything. I never in a situation where I had an ultimatum in terms of, getting clean and sober, or, my family leaving me. She never put me in that situation. However, she did, unfortunately, have to learn to work and live around me. And what I mean by that is that, there were times where, if I was using, and, it could have been the day of or the day after, I still had responsibility as a parent. And my wife never let me back out of those responsibilities. So whatever I chose to do the night before, I still had responsibility as a parent. And she stressed that it wasn't fair to my kids because I made certain decisions. So I was up, the next morning going to practices, going to dance recitals. I was involved in games and tournaments. All the things that I had to, that I made a commitment to, I still didn't get out of because of the state that I was in. My wife made sure that I held up to my commitment or our responsibilities. And I think, that's one of the things that all this is about, is there's accountability in this, right? There's accountability. And if we want to get clean, if we want to get sober, a lot of that has to do with holding ourselves accountable and not getting out of things and making excuses. And she never let me do that. So I'm just thankful that what she was, that she still pushed me to make sure I did what I had to do and made sure that I held up to my responsibilities.
That's a really powerful way to look at it, right? With accountabilities and what we have for responsibilities. And, something that we talk about here is that it starts with us, like, wanting to make that change. Getting sober is the most selfish decision that you can make, because it is like, you have to make it for yourself, starting there. And then it benefits everybody else around you. But then I think a lot of times we think that that's where it stops. And that's where we get into the discussions about sobriety and recovery and the difference in those definitions. So before we started the podcast, I never really even called myself sober in public. I just said I didn't drink. Like, I didn't know there was a difference between sobriety and recovery. I went to therapy before we started the podcast. And I talked about that I didn't drink and it had been a long time, but I never called myself an alcoholic, and we never explored like the reasons why. So like that, going into your mental health and like recovery and everything, like you're really trying to heal. It's not just about removing that, whatever your poor coping strategies are. Like if it's a drug, if it's pornography, if it's gaming, like those are coping strategies that get toxic. So when they get to the level that's toxic, that's when that change has to happen. But just removing that doesn't mean that you're not going to throw it into something else. Like, for example, I was a workaholic, or I really dove into stories like head first and didn't come back out for a while. Like that kind of stuff. It's like, why? And, a lot of it is education, just like learning why. And the information that we need is not going to seek us out. No, we have to seek that information and the different perspectives on life.
Yep.
What was it that was, okay, I need to make this change, and led you to do that?
Wow. Well, I think it was a progression. I knew that my addiction was getting out of control, because, it was starting to affect my daily life. And I tried to quit, previously, kind of cold turkey and just, but, I truly wasn't ready. That's the thing. I think it's a level of readiness as well.
For sure.
And I think that a lot of times we want to, we need to, but if we're not ready to totally surrender and give up, all type of control into what we're doing, because we're already not in control, right? That's a big myth about addiction, is that we don't want to surrender and give up control, but we're already not in control, because that's why we're in the situation that we are. I'd been using, and then the next morning I woke up and I was I just couldn't do it anymore, right? I woke up and I was just literally, I know this sounds cliche, but I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was tired of the cycle. I was tired of the cycle of using and then feeling great and then feeling like crap, afterward, and then saying, and telling myself, okay, I don't want to do this again. But then like the next opportunity shows itself and I'm doing it. I was tired of it. And, I woke up and I was in pain, emotionally. I was stuck and I, had to get ready for work, unfortunately. And I went down and looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize myself. I truly didn't anymore. I didn't recognize myself. And I got down on my knees and I hadn't prayed in a long time, but I just prayed to God. I said, whatever you need to do to take this away from me, I promise you the rest of my life that I live will be in supporting others and living a healthy lifestyle and doing whatever it needs to be. And I said, I don't care who knows that I'm an addict. I don't care who knows I'm moving towards recovery. I don't care. Whatever you need to do to take this away from me, do it. And that day was the last day that I ever used. And there were tears coming down my face and I couldn't stop crying, but I felt good because I knew that I got to a certain point. And then later on that afternoon, that evening, my wife, had picked me up from a doctor's appointment, and she said, okay, so now what? And she said, is there anything you want to tell me? And that was the first time I said out loud, I said, I'm an addict and I need help. And from that day on, I've been clean and sober.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you made that decision. And I'm not saying it's awesome that happened, but like that you made that decision and that you've been clean and sober since that day. Like similar to me, like I woke up and I was I'm done thinking about who I have to apologize to. I'm done not being able to keep anything down for an entire day. It's time. And what you said is powerful, that we don't have control. We let us focus on that mirage that we have control. If I want to, I can do this, right? But we really don't. And, exploring why gets difficult. Never even thought about it because I didn't think it mattered, but it does. It's something that parenthood taught me, is it really does matter why I did it, especially if I want to help my kids.
Yes. To
maneuver the pitfalls that are out there that I put in their way because they are half me. So, what advice do you have for parents in navigating kind of maybe conversations or just looking out there?
Yeah. I the first advice is to be honest, with your children. And, honesty is differentiated based upon the child's age and grade level, right? There are some things that, developmentally, a child that is 6 years old won't understand versus a child that's 14 years old. So, but I think it starts with being honest about, everything that happens and takes place. And so you have to think about this is that, if you are in recovery or you have a history of addiction in your family, you have to think about those things and how they could potentially impact your children, as you said. So, for example, you have to have conversations early on about alcohol at parties, right? Yeah. Because, we think of them to be so socially acceptable. However, for those of us that have a history of addiction, right, alcohol could, even though it may not be the first drug of choice, could be something that could be very challenging for our children as they get older. So the way that they see, people behaving when they're drinking, the way that they see people behaving when they become intoxicated, right? All those things you have to be mindful of so you can have a conversation about what that looks like. And also what it looks like, being responsible, and for some of us, being responsible means that, for me and
means
that we can't drink at all. Like that's
right.
That's responsible drinking for us. It's not, I'm only going to have one or two because, one is too many, 1,000 is never enough. So, we can't socially drink. So we have to set that example for our children. So especially if they know that if there's a history of addiction in our family, for me, I can't do that. Now my wife's different. My wife does not have that history of addiction in her family. So if she chooses to have a drink or she chooses to enjoy herself when she's not driving and she doesn't have to do anything, like I say, that's perfectly fine for her. But we have to have that conversation with our children about that so they understand and they don't get it confused. Because as you said, they're half of me.
Yep.
So you don't know which half, they're going to inherit. Hopefully, they don't inherit the side of addiction, but because we know there also is a genetic predisposition to addiction at times, we have to just be mindful of that when we have those conversations with our children.
For sure. It's something that like at 2 and 4, I've already kind of planted the seeds, and I'm just going to continue to water them. And, learning from Jessica Leahy, like that was a big eye opener in her book, The Addiction Inoculation. And it's just, there's a lot that we can do that we don't realize. Yes. And like you said, being honest it just goes so far with a lot. But, taking what you've learned from recovery and putting that into parenthood, I'm sure it's kind of helped your patience level, right? I've noticed it's helped mine a little bit, but how is it as an educator? Because we all know it's different when it's your own kids than when it's somebody else's. And like you still want to help, you still have that parental instinct, but at the same time, sometimes it can be tough, right? To get through. And
yeah,
what I guess my question here is, what techniques have you been able to impart to help them with coping skills?
Well, I think, because I don't do a lot of direct service anymore,
right?
with students, but I think it's empowering those that do, with the opportunities to go out and seek the knowledge that they need to do to help and to do that. And also the type of programming and environment that we have, the school that I currently work in, we are very big on emotional well-being and promoting that. And that's a part of mental health, right? So therefore, culturally within our building, that is the way in which people understand and know that we operate. So we put that as a priority. So therefore, everything else after that is secondary. So when you do that, you're talking about, self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision-making, things of that nature that have an impact on the child. So therefore, we're focusing on that before even academics, so that we can have that as a foundation in the center, so that anything else that comes after that will have a pretty challenging time getting to that foundation of what we're looking at.
That is so wonderful. Like, I'm so glad to hear that, because thinking back on my childhood and thinking back on school and even seeing kids coming through the apprenticeship. I'm a lineman, work on high voltage electricity. So come across people who come into the field 18 years old, fresh out of high school, or, upwards of, I had an apprentice who was 40 some and had owned businesses before coming to the company. we focus too much on stuff that doesn't help you doesn't help you in adulthood, right?
Yeah.
So hearing you like take this, like you're imparting knowledge, but you're also building like functioning people. And
yes,
it's hard getting through the walls of tradition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so my kids are in pre-K and like they're going through kindergarten, and then my wife is a therapist and she is in schools right now helping them, and she's been telling me about how like they're teaching like kind of coping strategies. So like if they get angry, you take your hot chocolate and you blow it out, you take a big breath of it in so you can smell it, and then you blow it out. And then like that's incredible. I'm so happy to hear stuff like that. Like that it just fills me up with pride. So what started you down this path as an educator to the emotional well-being being the foundation?
Right. Well, my undergraduate work is in special education. So I was a special education teacher, prior to getting into administration. And the majority of the populations that I worked with were students with an emotional disability. So it was kind of always at the root of the work that I did in schools. And I saw that, if students weren't emotionally regulated and stable, that academics didn't matter anyway, right? So it's just the idea that if we don't take care of that, in terms of having a foundation, like English doesn't matter, mathematics doesn't matter, science doesn't matter. Like all those things are out the window. So like, once again, like we've been talking about control and lack thereof. If that happens, like there's no control anyway. So those aren't going to happen, right? You're not going to get a chance to get to the curriculum if you don't seek out, and understand what's truly going on with the child. So that what started me on this path. And then as I began to get in different positions and roles, it just carried over. So like every decision that I made, every type of situation I was in or position that I had, I always brought the emotional well-being into the forefront of what I did. And that was the lens that I looked at things through. And so even at a level of a district level administrator where, I guess at times I may be kind of high up on the food chain, so to speak. But I still bring that experience. I still bring that point of view into the conversations that I have. When we talk about policy, when we talk about procedures, when we talk about protocol that we put in, when we're having discussions on curriculum, I'm still bringing that focus of social emotional well-being into the forefront, that needs to be integrated throughout the day, just like any other subject matter.
That's very heartwarming. Like just seeing the evolution of how we look at life. Like, when we were growing up, it was about physical health, and that was kind of it.
Yes.
Like, we talked about happy, mad, glad, sad, but that's kind of as much as we got into everything else. But like now with mental health being incorporated with your physical health, like just as much, especially as you're a kid, like it creates, you're having the conversations at a young age. So then when you're older, it's easier to have conversations.
Yes.
It's, that's just the evolution that you're seeing there is just so heartwarming. So, the next thing that I want to get into is like, the coalition of schools educating mindfully and how you became involved in that and kind of their mission. But before we get into that, let's hear a little bit of a word from our sponsors. So it's wintertime. We're coming into spring, change of seasons. Like your skin gets really dry. I shave my head like 3-4 times a week. I got to put lotion on it. I've been doing a better job, but I haven't always been great. Well, Waste Skincare, they really make a nice product that really makes my skin feel moisturized for longer than some of the other products I've used. So quench your thirsty skin and leave it feeling satin smooth with Way Melrose Place Body Cream. It's fast absorbing to nourish your skin when you need it most, and it's got hydration that lasts and prevents dryness. Got high quality nourishing ingredients like squalane, coconut oil, and cocoa butter. Experience the new Way Melrose Place Body Cream and Body Cleanser. Your body, your way. Go to theouai.com and use code BLEAV to get 15% off your entire purchase. That's 15% off your entire order at theway.com using your promo code BELIEVE. What's more important than your peace of mind? Nothing. And that's what NordVPN is here for, to give you peace of mind while you are online. With all of the threats that you face today on the internet, it is more important than ever to be sure that you have the best VPN you can get. NordVPN is the world's best VPN service, offering the fastest connectivity, most servers, and next-gen encryption to make sure that everything you do online stays secure. Plus, you can use NordVPN on all of your computers and devices, no matter the operating system. With NordVPN's unlimited bandwidth, you never have to worry about a slow connection either, and plans start at under $4 per month. So grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/believe or use the code BLEAV to get up to 70% off your NordVPN plan, plus one additional month free. Also, risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. And I was just reading about streamers and getting doxxed, so their personal information put out online. And people really recommend a VPN because if you don't, I mean, just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Bad actors, they can find your personal information and then splash it on the internet. So just protect yourselves out there, everybody. All right, Evan. So like, I'm very interested in the coalition of schools educating mindfully. I mean, I've already kind of told you how much it's kind of given me life, to be honest, to know that our education system is taking this seriously and we're not just like, I mean, so my 4 and 2-year-old got a report card. It's the first time they got a report card from daycare and preschool. And like, we were really proud. And then I'm sitting there thinking like, what are we teaching them? Like, should I be proud about this? They're 4 and 2. And I know that they're smart. Who cares what anybody else thinks as long as they're having fun, like progressing with where they should be progressing, right? But like, we put too much stock into these report cards. So could you tell me a little bit more about the Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully and how you got involved?
Sure. So COSEM is the acronym for the Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully. And our mission is just to make sure that we're bringing mindfulness into schools throughout the country as much as possible. And, you know, for me, mindfulness, as it put, is in the most simplest terms, just be aware of being aware, right? And so a lot of those things that you discuss, you know, with your own children of that, but also, you know, being present and understanding what's going on around us. That's really the, you know, what we've done through the organization. And I got involved with them a little under a year ago. I knew the executive director had been reaching out to me based on some of the things that she saw that I was posting on Twitter. We connected, and she, you know, said that we have some future spots open on the board, and wondered if I'd be interested in becoming aboard. And I can tell you, at first I said no, just because with time commitments, I wanted to really be able to give the organization the time that I could. She said, you know what, you know, we have enough board members that if you can't, you know, contribute as much as you like, it's still going to be okay. But I really want to have your voice involved based upon what you do and the things that you've been putting out. So I got involved, and I'd say it's probably one of the best experience I've had in a long time. Just connecting with people throughout the country, connecting with others that have similar likes and interests, and also knowing that our mission is to bring this into schools, which is something I think is extremely important, today, there's so much that's going on with the students that we have and what they're trying to navigate. I think navigating everything, especially since the beginning of the pandemic until now, later on in the pandemic, it's almost inevitable that students would have to have some type of mindfulness work with themselves just so they can they can be stable, right? Because there's so much going on, there's so many challenges. Have to find a way in which that they can be grounded, be centered, and be ready to learn in school.
It's definitely a skill. And by that, I mean, skills can be learned. And I think sometimes we take for granted innate things. Like some people, I think, overuse common sense, right? Like that common sense is not something that is honestly real. It's skills that you learn, and we forget where we start and where we come from a lot of the time.
Yes.
So like hearing about, you call it COSEM, COSEM.
Yep.
Like I'm excited that this is something that is, you're do across multiple states, right?
Yes.
So, if people want to become involved, if we have any educators out there listening and they want to get in touch, just real quick, where could they go to kind of get in touch with?
So they can go to the website, www.cosem.com, or you can go ahead and Google Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully. And you go ahead and pull that up. And then when you see it, there's affiliates.
Okay.
Drop down screens. And if you want to become an affiliate or be involved, that's where you go ahead and click on, and then there'll be more information for you to send that out to the executive director, and then she'll get back to you. It's pretty simple, pretty quick. But I can tell you that we've seen a lot of headway and a lot of people come on board, even if they're not bringing on an entire school district or school. Just having membership in different parts of the country has been growing quite rapidly.
That's awesome. And we're going to include that in the show notes. Okay. I believe I already have the website up there. Okay. Or on the show notes, I mean. Okay. So we're educating students on mindfulness, and your foundation is emotional well-being. Do you try to connect with the parents and teach them as well? Because I've been thinking, and this is where I'm coming from with it, as a parent, I've learned that I need to deal with my own problems so that I don't put those on my children. And if I don't do that, then whether I'm doing it consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously, I'm putting it on them. So, they're watching everything I do, and they taking it into themselves. So if I don't love myself like I haven't for most of my life, they're going to see that, and they're going to absorb that. Is there any way to kind of talk to parents about this? Because it's never too late to do better. It's never late to start being better. And I think that's something we learned in sobriety and recovery, that maybe other people who don't join that community learn that either.
Right. No, I think the best way to do it with parents is just, especially with me, is the work that I do with any adults, is I, talk about ways to be honest, to be open, ways to really demonstrate a growth mindset, right? Instead of a fixed mindset.
I love that. Can you explain the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset really quick?
Sure. So a fixed mindset is basically, your own set of values, beliefs, etc. And that, regardless of what happens, what goes on, is that things are not going to change. They're always going to be the same. Growth mindset entails that we have the ability to change at any time during our lives, and we can, and even small steps, small increments and progression is growth, and it's a positive. Instead of looking at it as, oh my gosh, I have all this work I have to do, and I'm only, 20 years old, and what am I going to do by the time I'm 50? And the task becomes insurmountable. Mm-hmm. It's looking at small chunks and chunking things and saying, I'm 20 now. What can I do by the time I'm 21, 22, 23? So by the time that I am 50 years old, right, I will have met my goal. So it makes things more realistic so they don't become overwhelming to us.
So I recently learned about this, and I've really adopted the growth mindset. And I mean, you can break it down to what can you do tomorrow, or
yes.
What did I do better today than I did yesterday? Mm-hmm. And honestly, sometimes it is take a step back to look at the forest through the trees, right? And understand that I know I need to slow down today because I went so hard yesterday. And that helps your patience level because you're taking that deep breath. And that's just about life. So, I spoke about how I was so deep in self-loathing, I didn't know that I was doing it, right? I was just waiting. Anytime that something good happened, anytime that I was having fun with my kids or something, I was just waiting for that other shoe to drop. And sometimes I would create it through self-sabotage and not realize it. I think as parents, we just need to understand that we're not perfect.
Yeah.
Putting ourselves on pedestals for our kids is setting them up for failure. And like you said, being honest about who we are, what we can do, it goes a long way with your kids. It really, really does. So when you're talking with parents and you explain this, the difference between the fixed and the growth mindset, do you get pushback, or are people generally accepting?
They're generally accepting. I think especially when they realize that most of their lives they've had a fixed mindset. Mm-hmm. And they realize it. I think they're pretty open to thinking about a growth mindset, especially when you think about how you can transfer that over to your children, right? Because, if you're a child, you think that everything is a huge deal, right? Everything everything's a big deal. And if you're able to talk to your child about having a growth mindset, it truly does allow them to break everything down and put things in perspective and make things practical for them. So most of the time, parents do not push back. They're pretty open about accepting the growth mindset over the fixed mindset.
I'm glad to hear that. That's especially with some of the factors that go into today's world. Sometimes we dig deeper, our heels in. In focusing on the emotional well-being and bringing in the mindfulness and, talking with parents about the mindset, how have you seen a change in the culture of the entire school? As far as, I'm not going to say disciplines or punishments, or because we all have emotions, but is it generally a place where people are unafraid to ask questions and learn?
I think it depends, and I think there are times where the adults feel safe, and that's another part about, right? It's about emotional safety.
Yes.
And psychological safety first and foremost. And that's something that we're able to control, right? For me as an administrator, I can control the type of environment in which people work, right? If they feel safe enough to take risks, if they feel safe enough to communicate and have thoughts and express their ideas, I can control that because I'm the one that can determine, well, if they say this, is this going to come back to haunt them, right? It's going to be a gotcha. Am I setting them up for that? Or am I going by them speaking their mind and sharing their ideas and thoughts and there not being any repercussions? I'm creating the environment that, that I want, or the environment that's open for that. So I think that emotional safety and psychological safety is huge.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think a lot of, honestly, businesses, companies, anyone could take a great deal of, example from that.
Yeah.
If you only work 32 hours a week, but you feel safe and you feel like you can take chances and well rested, and honestly, like, you're not burned out, you're a lot more productive.
Yes.
You're a lot more accommodating. You're a lot more, it's just like a lot. You're like, in my profession, you're safer, right? When we're not tired, when we're not burnt out, when we're not pushed to the edge, you are safer. A lot of times we think that we have to work so hard, put in these 60-hour weeks, put in these 70-hour weeks, and then trying to balance family on top of it. And we're so stressed out. We're that piano string that's pulled, or a guitar string, or whatever you want to use, is pulled completely tight. And then next thing you know, you're just the one little string and everything's out of whack. Like,
Yep.
Fostering a place where you can allow for that growth is, it's special. It really is. This has got me like really excited, and I just for the future, like, just hearing like I said, like with my wife being the therapist and like going through the coping, and then like, my son brings it home a little bit, makes it easier for me to parent because he has a little bit of a short fuse from me. So I need to try to control my fuse, but then also try and help him figure out ways to control his fuse.
Right.
I need to do that by example. Like, just these foundations that we don't realize that we need, right? And a lot of people think toxic masculinity is the foundation that we need. Like, you hear people talk about being soft and stuff like that, and really it's about a whole and not the part. And that's what's exciting about this, is that it's not just about the part anymore, it's about the whole. What got you started with the mindfulness?
Yeah. So what started with me was the fact that when I was in treatment and therapy, the first type of meditation that was introduced to me was mindfulness meditation. So it helped me so much that I started to put that into the forefront of my daily practice. Had I not gone through that experience, I probably wouldn't have even touched on mindfulness. I probably would never touched on meditation, because I was like most people. When I think about meditation, I had this idea in my head, right, that I had to sit on the floor, cross-legged, fingers touched together, and like, in a position that wouldn't be comfortable to me.
Yeah.
Because I know I couldn't do that. But with mindfulness, just the idea that it was very practical, and I'm a practical person, but practical, but yet it was effective. But that's what got me involved into the meditation, and especially into mindfulness work.
I honestly think that that's extremely important, that people see the lessons that we use in sobriety and recovery. They're applicable to
100%.
every part of our life. So like, yes. I've been very vocal about how, sure, we talk about sobriety, we talk about recovery, but it's more than that. Like, you can take things that we learned. So one of my favorite favorite books that I read the past couple of months is Not Drinking Tonight, A Guide to Creating a Life You Love, a sober life you love. And in it, it's done by Amanda White, and she talks about emotions and just how it's okay to feel them. It's okay to allow them. And like, that is something like you learn that in sobriety and recovery, but so many more people need to hear that. And like, it's so much of that book, it's not just about exploring your relationship with alcohol or, whatever coping mechanism you're using. It's about making positive changes to your life with that growth mindset. And I just want more people to understand, like, yes, we're talking about a heavy subject. Yes, like, there's seriousness about it. There's people that die from this. But it can also bring joy. We live life in the present now. Like, and there's just so much more to it than just cutting out whatever the vice or coping that you were using. And I'm so like, you taking that and then implementing it and it going where it has that's incredible. That's a testament to you and how you're open-minded into using stuff. So I want to give you flowers on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
As we're kind of winding down here, Evan, what's one takeaway you want people to take from this?
Sure. One thing I want people to take away is that you have control of your life, right? You always have control in terms of making decisions that are impactful for you. If you want to make a change in your life, you can just do it. You don't have to wait for the right time. You don't have to wait for the right hour, for the right day. You can just do it. The other thing that I want people to take away is that when you make a decision to be sober and when you're in recovery, it truly is one day at a time, and that one day at a time expression is a growth mindset piece, right? That you take it one day at a time, do what you need to do. And if you can make it through that one day, you can make it to the next day, et cetera, without having to look so far ahead. Because what happens is when we either are dwelling in the past, that leads to depression. When we look too far ahead, that leads to anxiety. So we want to make sure that we're staying present, being mindful, and taking it one day at a time.
I love that. I love that those principles you just broke down, because sometimes we take too much of one of those, or like we look at it as cliches or something, and we just don't fully accept what it truly means. And it does take time to learn. Like, that's the thing, is life isn't a snap of the fingers and you're getting results. Like, it's slow. It takes time to see results. One thing we didn't get to, and I'm really mad at myself for not getting to it because I was really excited to, is your balance, breaks, and boundaries. Can we talk about that real quick before we get done?
Sure. So balance, boundaries, and breaks is something that came to me when I was going through treatment and therapy. What happened is that every time I'd be in a session, whether it was individual or group session, these three themes kept coming up. The first one was balance, and realizing that I had a lack of balance in my life, and understanding that balance has nothing to do with being equal, but actually more about equity in terms of giving your time, energy, and efforts to people and activities that are reciprocating. And I didn't do a lot of that. So, but I was giving a lot to things that I wasn't getting anything back into, and I wasn't receiving the dividends that I should have been. So that's balance. The next one is boundaries. And for me, it wasn't so much about respecting the boundaries of others, which is important, but also understanding my own boundaries and setting my own boundaries and adhering to them. So I had a real problem saying no. And I would do everything for everybody else, but I would never get anything back in return. So, with the boundaries, had a hard time saying no. So it impacted me tremendously, because what would happen is I would do it. I would do it for other people, but then when they wouldn't do it for me, I'd be let down. But I was the only one that was in control of that, because I was setting myself up to be let down, because I was expecting more of others than I expected of myself. So that's the boundary. The last one is breaks. And this has to do with the mindfulness as well. And this is just pausing, taking a moment of time to pause in life, to relax, to take things in, and understanding what it means to be in the present. And also taking time out for yourself, because, another piece that I wasn't doing is I stopped doing a lot of self-care, whether that meant just, doing things I love to do or taking a vacation with my family. I stopped doing those. So, with that and pausing and taking a break, and also with the mindfulness and meditation, you can do that 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, right? You can take 2 minutes out of your day to pause, to just relax, to think, be in the present, and it takes over, and it allows you to kind of make way for other things in your life during that day.
That right there is the trailer for this episode. That is life advice right there. Like, it was almost like you were talking specifically about me there too. I think that's a lot of us. I think a lot of us have that. And gosh, I love that. I love those 3 Bs. Evan, thank you so much for coming on and
thanks, RJ.
Being open and having this conversation. Like, you really have provided me with a lot of hope, and I know that you're providing other people with hope, especially with where the education and talking to, not just stopping at children, but also talking with parents about it too. That's beyond wonderful. If people wanted to follow you, where could they find you?
Sure. They can find me on Twitter, which is pretty much my social media home. You can find me at Evan Whitehead 00, at Evan Whitehead 00. You can also find me on Instagram, which I just pretty new to Instagram and just using that most recently. You can find me at Balance, Boundaries, and Breaks. So Instagram, you can find me at Balance, Boundaries, and Breaks. And if you want to contact me for anything, for any trying to training, professional development, workshops, etc., you can email me at Gmail. My Gmail account is evanwhitehead11@gmail.com. evanwhitehead11@gmail.com.
And we will be putting that in the show notes as well. I love that you started that Instagram and it's Balance, Boundaries, and Breaks. Like, that's awesome. I love that. I'm kind of new. Like, we've had the Instagram account for a long time, but I didn't really post on it. So I'm still trying to wade through those waters too, because it's different. For me, Twitter is also like my social media home. Like, I just, I go through and I prune who I follow like every once a month. And so there's a lot of mind opening perspectives on there that I appreciate. I try not to get sucked down into the toxic hole that it can be sometimes, but
right.
This was awesome. It was exactly what I was hoping it would be, talking about this stuff. And, you're a wonderful person.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you are doing. Keep it up, and I will try and push people to COSEM as much as I can as I come across it. This has been Untapped Keg, podcast about sobriety and mental health, part of the Believe Podcast Network. We're spotlighting stories of hope, love, and mindset opportunities. You can find us on all social media platforms as Untapped Keg. If you're listening to this, we're at youtube.com/UntappedKeg. You can watch videos, see clips, just kind of see what we've been doing. It's available on all podcast platforms. If you've enjoyed this show, if you like what you've heard, look Evan up on Twitter. Subscribe, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review. We haven't gotten a review in a while. Love it if we could get a couple 5-star reviews in there. And let us know how we're doing. Hit us up. DMs are open. If you're struggling, we can offer some peer support. We can help you as much as we can. And if that includes trying to get you the help that you need, we will do what we can. I love this episode. I'm excited to edit it and get it out to everybody. Evan, thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday. And everybody, try to be better tomorrow than we were today. Because at least if we don't make it, we tried. That's all we can do. Have a good week. Thank you. Love you all.